Marcos, you'll remember. He's going to talk about his time in the NAIA and now the jump they've made to Division II.
Well, just as Coach Keno had talked about, the level in the NAIA is very, very competitive, and I think across the board in college soccer, as you move up the ranks, it's typically bigger, stronger, faster. Obviously, Division I being the highest level, I think, for us in terms of moving, from the NAIA into Division II. Is now we're formally in a conference, and the California Collegiate Athletic Association conference is top to bottom very, very, very strong. I mean, there's really no easy game in that conference, and Ian can attest to that as well. On the men's side, you get 3 points for a win, you get 1 for a draw, and every point is valuable in that conference. And so when you look at from top to bottom, like I said, the amount of pressure, the amount of attention to detail, mistakes are punished at that level, which our players are learning very, very quickly that the executional piece, at that level is a big, it's a big responsibility. And additionally, the shortness of the season, with us, we've been able to begin 2 weeks prior to school beginning at the end of August, and then our last game was October 30th. So the amount of time that you have to prepare before you're starting to play games competitively is a short window, and so you've got to be prepared to play at a high level from the start.
So with the mic right next to you, Ian, could you grab that mic and talk for a little bit? You were watching some junior college soccer just Friday. Maybe the jump from high-level club or junior college soccer to NAIA Division III, Division II?
Yeah, I watched Frank's team on Friday, Palomar versus Miracosta up at Palomar, and every time I go to a junior college game, there's usually 1, 2, 3, maybe more kids who stand out, players who stand out, and we're looking for the kids who have some really good technical stuff going on. I think the speed is all around every level at this point. College soccer's gone to such a good point in the US, and but it's very competitive everywhere. So students who are in their second year, athletes in their second year junior colleges, we're looking at those guys, see if they can make the jump from a 2-year school to a 4-year school. And for instance, the game I saw on Friday, there were probably 4 or 5 players in that game that I'd love to see how they would fit in with our group. And it's just all about being a little bit sharper, probably technically. The speed is, like everyone's saying, it goes a bit higher every sort of level you go up. But the junior college option is a great option to make sure you're getting your grades, getting some classes, and you're playing for a couple of years, and then hopefully transition to a 4-year school to finish up your first degree, or get your first bachelor's degree out of the way. So it's a great option to move through the ranks for sure.
I'd like to have, I'm going to hand this mic to Courtney and have her talk a little bit about Division III. Courtney?
Generally speaking, at a Division III school, obviously we do not give any athletic scholarships. We are only academic scholarships. So obviously school is very important. Keeping your grades up, getting into Division III schools tend to be difficult. However, the great thing about Division III school is that you can play soccer and also be able to do a lot of other things besides soccer. We are very competitive, but you also are able to do things like go and study abroad, which is not an option usually at higher levels, and also be very involved on campus. So kind of getting more of the whole experience of college, and obviously having soccer a huge part of that.
So we'll take this mic. I'll take this mic down to Chris, who's a head coach at the Division I level, just to talk about what he thinks about the Division I level in regards to its place in college soccer.
So on the men's side, there's just over 200 Division I men's programs, and on average roster is probably 25 to 30 players on a roster. So that's anywhere between 5,000 to 6,000 players that are playing at the top level in this country. It's also a platform and a springboard for kids to get an opportunity to get an education, but also to get exposure to play and move on to the professional level. But once again, whether it's Division 1, 2, 3, NAIA, junior college, being able to get an education, play soccer in this country, you can't replicate that in other parts of the world. So we have a distinct advantage, and all the players that are out here, there is a level for you, but I would say every coach's job is contingent on results, but we also need to make sure that our students are making progress towards their degree and things. So, but Division 1 is like I said, one level just below pro in this country. So
if we could hand the mic to Ziggy. Ziggy is a Division 1 coach at San Diego State. I'd like to change up and let's start talking about the types of aid that are available to college players. And why don't you focus on Division 1 and what you can see there?
So at the Division 1 level, we have athletic aid to begin, which begins at we have 9.9 scholarships for our program, the programs that are fully funded. And that will be divided amongst the 28 players that we carry on our roster. So it's not very realistic to think that you're going to come in and get a full scholarship to go play at a university, because it just dilutes the rest of your program and your team. There's a number of other, academic aid, that we look into there, whether it's grants, loans, things along those lines. So, as you go through academically, certain schools, state schools provide certain assistance, private schools provide different types of assistance. And, so for you to kind of reach out and see what else is out there, particularly with the parents helping out the young students. I remember coming through as a young player. I was a junior college player, for my first couple of years. My parents had no idea, how to help me. And as we educate, I think it's gotten a lot better based upon the directors that are out here and in the clubs utilize them, because they are a resource between them and your counselors. There's, Hispanic, minority, there are so many different types of scholarships. My family's 4th generation from Poland. I think we got $500. I mean, there's something out there, but you really have to kind of comb through and figure out, and you can make college affordable, and that's the thing. So.
All right, what I'd like to do now is have our Division 3 coach again. I'm going to have Courtney talk a little bit about academic aid. As you recall, Courtney said they don't have athletic scholarships at the Division 3 level, but the Division 1 level does have athletic and academic, but these Division 3 coaches are experts at taking advantage of that. So, expert Courtney?
At the Division 3 level, generally speaking, obviously academic is a huge part of it. The higher GPA, probably the more money they're going to offer. Is around presidential scholarships, usually around $20,000 or so. And then after that, you look more at like grants, like they talked about, and also then after that, financial aid. Just like all of the coaches have said, it's wherever you want to go. I truly believe that you can go and make it work. It's just you putting the work in on your time. There's tons of scholarships out there. You just have to put the work in. And obviously, right now, when you're in school, keep your grades up, because no one could ever take away your education. So the harder you work now, it will benefit you in college.
Courtney, could you hand that mic to Amanda? I want Amanda to talk a little bit about kind of how colleges will mix athletic, academic, and FAFSA, all those different aids.
Yeah, so like you said, at the Division 2 level, I think it's pretty tough for a lot of schools to fully fund one athlete, because there's only so many scholarships that we try to split up on our roster, usually 28 people or so. And so it's really important. I know we talk a lot about being student athletes, but being student athletes so that it's good for students who can come in, find a way to get academic money, find a way to get some scholarship money for the sport that they're going to play, and then again looking into what kind of grants, loans, all that kind of stuff out there, because of combining a lot of those things help you get into whichever school, especially if you're looking at private schools that are a little bit more expensive. Looking into every avenue that you have to find money is really important.
Thanks, Amanda. Could you hand that mic to Jason? And, I've got a daughter at Point Loma. College costs, they're real. Let's talk about how real they are.
Yeah, so Point Loma's not cheap. It's $43,000 a year to go to school at Point Loma. not very many people have the ability to pay money straight out of pocket for $43,000 a year tuition. That's back to the previous question. That's why it's important to find out what money is there. A school like Point Loma, it's academically, it's not an easy school to get into, but if you do get into the school, there's quite a bit of academic money that can be found. So for let's say you have a 4.0 and which it's hard, but 4.0 and a 31 on your ACT. That'll give you $17,000 of the school just gives you right then and there. So you add that on with maybe you get another 5,000 or 6,000 from the government. That's 20-something thousand. So now you have a bill that's $22,000 a year. So that's still a lot of money, but it's a lot less than 43,000. And I'm sure we're probably not the most expensive school up here. Pretty close. Chapman might be, but again, like Chapman, schools that are expensive, they usually have some money there, but you have to be a fairly decent student to be able to get that money.
I just want to add to that because you really need to look into what the school has to offer. Some schools are very unique. For example, SOCA is about $42,000 a year for room, board, and tuition. But SOCA is set up in a way that if a family earns less than $60,000 a year family income, the tuition of $30,000 is given to them free. And so between the tuition being gone, academic, every student that comes into SOCA gets academic money also, and then as a coach we can add soccer money to that. So the average last year of the students, not athletes, but the students at SOCA, out of the 40,000, they got 28.5 waived out of that. So it depends on the school. You really need to study to find out what schools give and what they have to offer. And I want to add, the better your grades are, the more money you're going to get. That's one of the things you have to learn right now and get those grades cranked up. I know a lot of schools just grade academic money on your grades and your entrance scores. So work on those grades.
Wendy, would you grab that mic, please, and talk a little bit about the overall college costs and the out-of-pocket stuff in Providence?
So our school is actually the most affordable liberal arts college in California at $36 total. That's including room and board and tuition and other general fees. And with that, a lot of players that come into us, they get really discouraged and say, well, it's really expensive. I'm not going to be able to afford this. I'm going to go somewhere else and then wait. And just with that, I just want to encourage you guys just to look out for a lot of different scholarships. There's a lot of different things. Like he mentioned that schools offer. At Providence, we have a Providence Promise. So if you come in as a freshman and you graduate from our school, and if you make anything less than $40,000 the year after when you're employed, Providence will pay a portion of your loans that you took out. So if you make anything less than $20,000, they pay 100% of your loans until you make that more in a job. And so a lot of our student athletes want to go into the mission field or want to go into nonprofits where they're not going to make that much money. Well, they can always, rest assured that Providence will pay some of their student loans until they're able to get a job where they can pay them themselves. And just with that, there's a lot of different minorities, minority scholarships, different scholarships for their parents' employments. I remember my freshman year, I got a scholarship of $1,000 just through my dad's work. So look into that. Look into various different websites, everything, into the college one, through your church. It's always, the cost. It's scary at first if you see like just a face value sticker. Okay, this is what it costs. But if you sit down with a coach, if you sit down with an admissions counselor and really break it down, and look at the different loans that you can get, the different other financial aid with grades, through scholarship, you can really lower that price down and make it very affordable. So,
as a parent myself, maybe you're catching some of the buzzwords that the college coaches are using. You heard Wendy talk about Mission Field and the Christian school she's at. Maybe that appeals to your family to defend Courtney and Chapman. I'll tell you, I teach TV and video at the high school I teach at, and I've got a film student that's narrowed it down to what we think are the two best film schools in America, and Chapman's one of them. So the specific things that a different school offers should be a big part of how you choose the college that you're looking at going to. Also, what's a really big part is the visit. And I'm gonna walk this mic from Wendy down to Chris again. And I'd like Chris and Ziggy to talk about Division I visits. And we're gonna work our way right down this line here and give each of these coaches a little bit of time to talk about how important it is to take a college visit.
Okay, you get, at the Division I level, you get what's called 5 official visits, but you can take as many unofficial visits as you'd like. The only difference between an official visit and an unofficial visit is that the university would incur any cost of you staying on campus, maybe transportation getting there, lodging, meals, those type of things. But what I would encourage everyone to do, because it's not an out-of-pocket expense, there are the unofficial visits. You know, contact a coach, a program, email them. You know, if you're in the locale of, you know, playing in a tournament, you can stop by and, Coach, I'm going to want to come by. I'm going to do an official tour of the university. Can I come by your office and talk to you about the program? I think official visits, you know, get down to the point when, you know, the recruiting process comes along and, you know, an individual has kind of narrowed down your prospective school to maybe their top 3 or top 5, and then you make arrangements to come in. And you know, going back and just jumping back to a little bit of the financial aid, we have a formula. It's kind of a 75-25%, 75% financial aid and 25% athletic aid, and somebody's school can be taken care of. But you know, the official visits, that's a little bit further down the process. You need to start that communication. That starts with you as the prospective student athlete, because we're recruiting you. Mom and dad help pay the bills, but you need to be the one making that communication, setting up those arrangements for visits. So.
Pretty spot on, you know, as far as the visits go. I mean, you're allowed 48 hours on campus, you know, where you come into the office and kind of, once your trip's arranged or flights arrived, obviously from a number of us here from Southern California, you know, we show you around, we get you introduced to some academic advisors, some counselors, show you kind of the tutoring system, maybe sit in a class, get a feel for the university and the college. And there's a lot of those things you can do on an unofficial visit as well, so that the university doesn't accrue a number of costs. One of the things that we actually do our unofficial visits, we've had a number of younger players who are coming in and visiting, who want to take a look, you know, the sophomores, the juniors, the seniors that are on campus, and that's really when it starts. On the men's side, you know, we get into, you know, we're recruiting out probably juniors, sophomores in high school right now. And then if a player leaves, we have some that transfer, maybe an opportunity opens up, injuries that we possibly bring in those seniors and take a look at them. So, you know, the communication is non-stop, it's ongoing. And I know on the women's side, I think you're recruiting 6th graders right now, I believe, right? So, you know, but it gives you a real good sense of what that school is all about, what the meals are like, where the dorms are, you know, taking a look. And so, you know, you can kind of be a student in the life for, you know, usually over the weekend, depending, some programs bring you in during the week so you can sit in class. So, you know, those are things that I think the parents really need to drive home as well. So you can get out there, you can see the team, see how they play. Is it going to be a good fit? How does the coach respond to his team? How does he treat them? How does he talk to them? You know, is it an environment you feel your son or daughter can succeed? And that's where you make your decisions. So.
I keep turning my mic off because of the wind. Sorry about that. Bobby, can you talk a little bit about anything with regard to college visits that may be different at the Division II level?
Well, I think, you know, just kind of piggybacking off of what Chris and Ziggy were talking about, I think at the Division II level, you know, very much, you know, the same. I think that the difference is at the Division II level, if budgetarily you're not in a position to, you know, use the NCAA terminology as far as an official visit in terms of being able to incur the cost of flights and lodging and things of that nature, the majority of the visits, you know, technically will be unofficial, but in our regard, or in my regard, it's very much official. It's getting you know, the individual on campus, you know, getting a feel for, you know, our philosophies, you know, not only from a soccer standpoint, but athletically, academically as well. I think specifically working with the women, you know, a phrase that I typically use with all recruits is, could you see yourself going here if you weren't playing soccer? And if you can honestly say yes to that, question, if everything is kind of a match, then you're going to find yourself in a position to where it potentially could be the right fit. But a lot of work has to go in through that process. Not only meeting with the coaches and sitting in on classes and getting a feel for the campus when it's fully in session, but also seeing the team play, meeting the players that are currently in the team, because they're going to give you specific feedback as in terms of what life is like, which potentially could be the shoes that you're in. And so it's a process that typically you go through, but like I said before, I think at the Division II level, most oftentimes the unofficial terminology is used, but it's very much an official visit per se. It's just not, many times the cost can't be incurred based on budgetary restrictions.
So there is something I want Amanda to speak about, and that is this one time, I've got the mic and it's coming. There you go, good. This one-time opportunity at the Division II level to even participate in a session. Can you talk about that?
Yeah, so we really recommend for anybody that's looking, especially at D2 schools, to go to the official visits, because in official you can do a practice with the team. And so, especially on the women's side, men's side, girls can come out and practice for a day. They can come out, stay for 48 hours, and then practice with the team. And that just gives them a good idea of, again, like they said, what the coaches are like, how they coach. I know a lot of coaches, it's easy for people to be one way when you meet them, and then a whole nother way when they coach. And so it's just a good opportunity for people to see if they could work with those coaches, what the girls are like, how they play, what kind of style it is, how the speed of play we've talked a lot about is very, very different. And so I think coming from a club team to see what that's like just gives you a good opportunity to be able to get out there and see if that school would be a good fit for you, and if it's somewhere that you could actually keep up with and play with. And so we always really recommend that if you have the opportunity to do that, I think it teaches players a lot.
Awesome. Could you hand that mic right next to you to Courtney? So Courtney, what about D3? Can you tell us about visits at the D3 level?
Yeah. Most of us, generally speaking, we usually just have unofficial visits where they'll come, take a tour of campus. We encourage doing the campus tour just because they give you a little more in-depth about the university, and then we'll do our own athletic tour. Our university doesn't show our athletic facility, so we do that, and then we talk to the athletes. And then we also encourage a lot of you guys to just meet some of the team. If you want to hear about the coaches, and we encourage you guys to ask the players about the coaches, because they live it every day, and most players will never lie to you. And also go to a game, see how we react. If a bad call is called, which happens often, how is the head coach reacting? How is the assistants? How do they respond? So those are always great ideas, just to be involved and get to know the players and see how they are on and off campus, on the field.
That's perfect. So Coach Kano, could you grab that mic and talk about the Wild Wild West that is the NAIA?
Well, I think Coach McLeish coaches the women, and we've been doing it a long time at Soka U of A. And one of the biggest advice, the best advice I can give you to get in your car, especially going up and down San Diego all the way to Northern California, you can drive and go visit campuses. I think the biggest thing for unofficial, official, like Chris said, is that make calls, emails, and sometimes you won't get the head coach. It's just, sometimes you won't. But the assistant coaches, like for us, I've created a recruiting coordinator, and that's their job full time to make sure that they can respond to everybody. And one of the best advice is to go to the ID camps. The ID camps for me in my men's program, my best players on my team, a good 4 of them all came from the ID camps. The 8 of our starters came from our ID camps. The rest was a quality video. We have foreign players from Italy, from Japan. The quality videos of one of my players from Northern Cal, our goalkeeper from Canada, is key for you. And obviously for Soka University of America, by the way, I have pamphlets for you after. I don't have any rules. But what I wanted to tell you is that to go visit the campus, but to be able to play soccer there, Courtney said to get to know the coach, ask the coach questions, and then to take the tour to get a feel for it. Because I have a philosophy that it's academics is why you go. Make sure that university has that for what you want. Number two is not soccer. I really feel that after 32 years doing this, is that it's where you live. Because if you go to sleep at night and you as a player, male or female, and you go to sleep and you're pretty much unhappy, I guarantee you when you wake up, you're not a nice person and you're going to want to leave. And you don't want to do that. You want to make sure that where you go to school, your academics is squared away, and the environment where you live and you eat right and you're safe and it's fun. Because in college you should have some fun. It should be controlled fun, but it's fun. And then the third, you get to play the great game. And I think Chris said it again, that there's a place for everyone to get your education, to enjoy where you live, and then to get your degree and be very successful in life. So NEIA, we have scholarships. NEIA, we recruit constantly like everybody else does, but it's constant to where I need players with great grades, and financially, my university will cover you for academics, and if you do get financial aid, we have everybody fill it out no matter what, and then we have soccer money. There's no way at our school, as Dave said, $42,000, and maybe throw in pizza money, it's close to 43, that if you have 85% of that covered, you've got a great place to go to school and have a great career and get a great degree.
So one thing Coach brought up is the ID camp. And while I know that you may or may not be familiar with what that is, let me just give you an example. I had a daughter that was playing club soccer here in San Diego and was at a showcase in Texas and was seen by a coach from UCSD, one of her two top schools, and was invited to an ID camp and went. And then the head coach at Point Loma, now these are all coaches I know, they found her in Texas, ironically, but then at the ID camp, 4 other coaches that were working at that ID camp discovered her, and now she's going on all these trips. The ID camp was critical. The ID camp that time, UCSD's not here right now, but had a Point Loma coach, had a San Diego State coach, had a UC Irvine coach working at the camp. So is there anyone here that's comfortable talking about ID camps? Coaches, anyone here that would like to? Okay.
So at San Diego State, we have a number of opportunities in camps. We provide a couple of one over the winter, one over the spring, and then a number of camps throughout the summer. We can bring in anywhere to about 150 players at each of the camps. You pay your way in. It's a great opportunity. We staff out a number of Division I coaches, Division II coaches, D3 and JUCO and NAIA. So it's across the board. Some of them are our top recruits. Some of them are not. We find players all the time, some that were off the radar. Remember when I was up at Cal Poly, we had DeAndre Yedlin in camp, who's now playing for the U.S. national team. So, there's such a different level of it. It's about 3 or 4 days. You have your ID camps. Some of them are one-day camps. Some of them are just an overnight camp. Some are just, you get the hotel. There's so many different levels of it. And then in the summer camps you go on, and they're 3-4 day camps, so you get to live in the dorms, the residence halls, you take the meals, transportation, you have trainers, everything that you can do, and you can relate with that coach. And as Frank was saying, a number of players, we all go out and work a number of camps as well, particularly the assistants to pay our bills. So we get an opportunity to find players elsewhere that we may not see, that we might not know about, kind of pique the interest. So I do think that, as you get older, you start to look into camps, particularly freshman, sophomore, junior year, and kind of put aside, because they can range anywhere from $200 to, $750, depending upon where you go to camp. And you just kind of, you want to know which coaches have been there in the past, because it's not always realistic to know who's going to be coming this year in the future. But, it's a great way to get on campus, see where it is, kind of your main idea. And I'd suggest you're looking within a region too. So if you're looking to stay in Southern California or Northern California, or maybe you've got family on the East Coast, you try to pick one of those out. Because typically there's going to be, 6 to 8 to 10 other coaches that are out there to see, who may be interested in their program. So it's a great way to be seen and to get to know who you have.
Thanks so much, Coach. I appreciate that. Now, Chris Volk is pretty famous for being everywhere. Now, I don't know how famous you are, but to me you are, because I see you everywhere, Chris. He's at club events like this. He's at junior college events. He's always doing this stuff. And now you've locked down some kid, hopefully from my club team, and you've offered him a package, and it's time for him to commit. Let's start with the D1 level and you, Chris. What does it look like when a player's going to make a commitment to play for you?
Well, Frank, I appreciate the kind words. Famous is far from it. My wife says, you're insane. I'm never home. So that can be trying anybody in this career that's trying to support a family. But, I'm passionate about the game. We do look at all levels. There's so much talent. I was, chatting here with Ziggy next to me, and there's so many kids playing this game, and there's so many different levels that they're playing at. It's a large country, and I think, to identify talent, there's talent everywhere. What you've got to do is find talent that fits your system, your style of play, and it's not just about the individual ability, but you want to try and find out what the character is like of these individuals that you're bringing into your program, because ultimately as a coach, you're responsible for their performance, not only on the field, but in the classroom. So it's a huge responsibility. So coaches do a lot of their homework. They reach out to the clubs, the DOCs, try and go watch training. They could be a different player in training than they are in a game. Great when they're great in training, great in games. Sometimes you have, players that show well in games, but they're poor training players, and you want that type of individual in your program. As far as, getting to the point of making a commitment, the signing date for Division I is the first week in February. And if you've kind of come to terms of identifying somebody that's going to be a good fit for your program, and you've talked through all the logistics, the financial, the academics, somebody can make a verbal commitment, but they can't actually sign until the first week of February, which is the national letter of intent. But for us, and in the business, if you give somebody a word, a verbal commitment, and they give you theirs, that should be binding enough. In the business, it can be a little shady sometimes. Or sometimes somebody says they've got a verbal commitment, and people are still knocking on their door and taking phone calls. So, once again, that comes back to the character of the individual and the family, and it's not always about the best deal financially. It's everything that Coach Kano said earlier. Outside of the classroom and the soccer field, are you going to be happy in that environment? Because life's bigger than just school and soccer. You got to enjoy the complete environment.
So, Jason, can you talk a little bit about commitments at your level?
So the dates are the same as Division I. The one thing that I would stress is he said it is, if there's a verbal commitment, it's binding on our end. So we expect the same the other way around. A couple years ago, there was a kid who had made a verbal commitment, and he was a big-time kid, and he decided the day of the NLI that he was going to go to a junior college, because the junior college coach promised him after 1 year playing junior college he would get him a pro contract. He didn't get it, but that's not the point. The point is, we made that verbal agreement. So we had him in our team for the next year, and he's gone in February, and now we have a couple months to fill that spot, and we never did. Still a little bitter. But a verbal commitment for us is it's bounding. We're not going to go. We're not going to go find somebody else to take your spot. You are our guy. But everything else, like Chris said, is the same for us.
All right. So, is it safe to say that a player could make a verbal commitment, and you said the term NLI? If you could hand that mic to your right to Wendy. National Letters of Intent. That's what NLI stands for. And he said February. Did you guys catch that? So, in February, when an athlete can sign that letter of intent, it's previously been verbally agreed to, and breaking it. As you can tell, Jason's bitter, and he's not a bad person. He's a little bummed out. But how does that work at the NAIA level, Wendy?
Well, we don't have a national letter of intent. We just do a verbal commitment and then a signing. So it's a little different at our level, but same applies. If we send an offer and they verbally commit, we expect you guys to be on the roster. We are counting you guys as one of our players for the years after. Now, there has been athletes in the past where, you know, they verbally commit and something comes up, they change your mind, but it's not, you know, not very common, and it just it kind of looks bad. But you know, there's been situations where, you know, we understand the situation or we understand what's going on. So, but for the most part, a verbal commitment is sort of binding to, you know, we want you as a player, and you're committing to come to our school and be a student here and a student athlete here. So, yeah, NAIA does it.
So, if you can hand the mic to Dave, let's talk about how they would communicate with you before they commit. So, what do you really think the communication between the player, and of course I know that also means their parents, but the player and you as the college coach looks like?
Our players, our students in general do not find out. We have an early application process and we have a regular application process. And there's a couple of dates. November 1st is our early application process, and if they are accepted, then we can talk to them, offer them some money, and hopefully we'll get them to commit. Our regular application process is due January 15th, but they don't know until March 1st. So it's way beyond the national letter of intent day. And what we do is once they've been accepted, we look at what the school offers them, we add what we can offer to them, and if we have, you know, we talk to the parents. Usually we do it through a direct visit there, or they come to the school, and if they're in agreement to that, we have them sign a letter of intent from our school, and we go from there. But we really can't do much until we have that acceptance from the school. That's one of our handcuffs that we have. Our school is very highly academic, and so their students don't find out until that date. One of the things we have to do, which is hard to do, is if you get a great offer from someone else and we can't tell you that you're going to be in here, I mean, if you can postpone it for a while, go ahead. But if you can't, you know, you've got to take care of yourself first, and we're not going to be the reason you don't get a chance to go to a school just because our school doesn't accept you. So we try and put it straight out on the table that way, and we deal with the parents and the players. And like I say, usually the final piece is done face to face if possible. If not, we do it through through phone and email. But we communicate once we find players that have applied to SOCA and really have shown their interest. We stay in touch with them at least once a week to make sure that they're still there, and that hopefully that we can keep them to that March 1st date when they've been accepted, and then we have a packet ready for them at that date, and then we try and get them signed right away.
So moving out of the wild, wild west, that is the NAIA, let's go to the NCAA Division III. Yep, there you go, perfect. And talk about restrictions these parents have on communicating with you and you with them, Coach. Parents and players, I'm sorry, I really meant to say players.
I like parents, no talking to parents. The restrictions, we can't, there's really no rules to Division III. We could communicate with you, the younger level, but just because we are able to do that, we usually talk to our juniors and seniors. Just because we don't offer any athletic scholarships, only academic. Obviously, we need to know that you're an academic student, that you're doing well to be able to get accepted into Chapman or to any, generally speaking, into Division III school. So we tend to focus more on the later years for those reasons. And then our communication is done the same way as everyone else, mostly through emails and obviously visits.
Well, I think she's underselling one thing. I think all college coaches are 60-word-a-minute texters. We're pretty good on text, I would say. Moving that over to Amanda, let's talk about Division II. What communication restrictions do you guys have?
So for Division II, we can't talk to you guys until June following your sophomore year, so or going into your junior year. So a lot of times if you guys are emailing coaches and you're freshmen and sophomores and you're not hearing back, it's because legally, due to NCAA, we cannot email you guys back and talk with you. So same thing if you guys show up on campuses at tournaments, we're limited into being able to talk to you guys at that age. Juniors and seniors, as soon as that June 1st deadline hits and we can start exchanging emails, phone calls, texts, we can talk to you guys. I think the only time that changes is, and they've talked about ID camps and the importance of that, you can come and be a freshman or a sophomore to an ID camp and talk to a coach and kind of start getting your name and face in there. It's really the only way around that rule of how we are able to talk to you and kind of see you play. But until then, you probably won't hear much from us. We can still say send video, send us your game schedules, we can still follow you, but you aren't going to hear much from us until June, heading into your junior year.
Just hearing that message loud and clear, Amanda said, send emails and other things, other communications. Just if you're not hearing back, don't get too upset about that because there are restrictions. Coach Chris, can you talk about the NCAA Division I level and your restrictions on communication?
Well, we already hit upon a little bit, but the rules have changed. And Ziggy and I were just checking, a couple years ago, you were not allowed to text prospective student athletes. Now texting is back. So there's too many social media forums now to have communication and limit it. But really it is leading into the junior year is when you can get direct correspondence back from prospective coaches at the Division I level. Anything prior to that, you can get generic correspondence. You get a questionnaire to go in the overall database. You'll get some camp communication. But the phone calling is, unlimited now. Texting is unlimited for prospective seniors right now. So, but once again, it comes back to you as the individual and starting that communication process. So, we still get calls all the time, mom and dad, and letters from mom and dad, when it should be coming from the individual because you're trying to groom your young men and women here, boys and girls, to be prepared to go to college. Unless you're going to be living in the dorms with them, empower them to start the communication on their own.
That's great. Great stuff. So what we're going to do with the last few minutes is I'll walk out with a microphone and offer anyone that might have a question for the coaching panel here to ask a question. So coaches, I want you to be thinking about anything left that you haven't got to say yet that you might want to say, because we may have to fill in some time here while people get brave enough to ask a question. So is there anyone that would like to start with a question? Good. Where's that mic at that Chris just had? There we go.
Real quick. To add to recruiting, with a good club, with a good team, you're your coach. I get a lot of my leads from coaches. Frank calls me, I call him back. Today I just talked to an old friend. I got 3 players for you, Kano. You gotta come watch it, run something. You gotta have a coach who gets on the phone, who'll call you also to give you a great recommendation. So make your coach work for you.
Make your coach work for you if you couldn't hear it in the back. That's great stuff. We do, as coaches, as club coaches, we need to be a part of that process. And, I'm sure that we're mostly willing to help you as well. Is there anyone else with a question? Thank you, by the way, Coach Kano. Is there anyone with a question? Nice. All right. Please say your name and the question.
Coach Ian, do you have a player called Saul?
We do, yeah. It's fantastic.
Orange Glen High School?
Yes, he terrorized me. Saul's outstanding. Yeah, man, you guys whooped us at Oceanside High, didn't you? Yes, you did. We're coming back though. Is there any other questions out there? Anything at all?
I have something to say.
Good, please, coaches. Let's use that mic.
A common question that comes up is what sort of things do college coaches look for when in the email? What sort of profiles you guys should have. I know there's like NCSA, there's soccer in college. There's a bunch of websites. For us, at least, the main thing we're looking for is maybe a highlight video and all the general information, GPA, scores, if you have them already, graduation year, anything like that. You know, it's good. We're not looking for a specific website that has, you know, something that you pay for and you have an account and, you know, we go through there. If you guys just send us a link, if you guys have your private websites or just an email with everything that's there, that's good enough, at least for us. I don't know if you guys would like to add anything to that, but just general information. When you email a coach, make sure it's specific to the coach. It's not like you're sending it to 50 other coaches at the same time, because those get deleted pretty quickly. So make sure you don't misspell the coach's name as well. Those also get deleted pretty quickly. Yeah. Do you guys have anything to add?
Yeah, and also put more than you're just juggling the ball on the highlight video. It'd be great to see in a lot of game action, you know, and pick out your specific points in the game. And if you do that, then we at least have something to go from.
All right, college coaches, anyone else with any final comments before we wrap up here?
Just if you're interested in SoCA, I'm going to put it right out there. I've got great brochures, beautiful campus. It's right here. Hey, I have to work hard. It's a small school.
Thank you, Coach. Anyone else? Be great. Yeah, let's pass that mic all the way down the line. Let everyone go ahead and close out.
Yeah, no, just basically to the parents as well, because I know that there are different types of coaches in college, and some coaches just want to communicate with your son or daughter. You know, I think you need to try to figure that out at the beginning, because some of us sit here and say, well, we don't want to be babysitting for 4 years, so it's got to be a part of the player getting involved. But I think for me, we really do understand that they're 15, 16, 17 years old, and they're not just making decisions for their next 4 years, but it's for their next 40 years. You know, they're going to get a degree, and as much as you can be a part of that process, not to make the decisions, but to help guide them through it, I think is critical, you know. And you know, I've just seen a lot of them, you know, when we get kids on campus that, you know, people are on different wavelengths, and it's almost a job interview sometimes, you know, when you kind of come into it, you know, and looking the part. And I know, like you said, it's a major decision when you're going to start investing, you know, $200,000 over your next, you know, 5, well, in my case, 12 years. But, you know, it's something not to be afraid to ask the coach and say, hey, how involved can I be in this process? Because again, you're making the best decision, helping your family for where they're going to be for the rest of your life.
All right, we've got a question for anyone that wants to grab the mic. On the video, does the video need to be a professional video? Who would like to answer that?
I think it was mentioned earlier, there's a lot of companies out there that, you know, if you have the resources and you want it professionally done, you can go out and do it. YouTube is great. You know, gentleman here in the back's filming us right now, so this could end up on YouTube somewhere. So, you know, you walk around and the quality doesn't have to be great, but I mean, identification of, you know, who the player is, jersey, number. There are certain things that highlight the player. Often we'll get things that are not identified, and we're actually tracking another player and more impressed with maybe than the one we got the video from. So make sure you clearly identify who you are in that video clip. And it's you know, Dave said not just juggling on the ball, but, you know, clips on and off the ball. You want to see some decision making, and not just on the ball. You need to see the larger scale of the field, especially the dynamic movement and things like that, and not just in possession, but defending as well. So goalkeepers, though, I will say goalkeepers, a training session with a goalkeeper coach, that is helpful for me. Being a former goalkeeper myself, Kano on the end, you can see a lot of technique and repetition with the goalkeeper in a training session. That to me is helpful.
Outstanding. Any other questions? All right, coaches, anyone have anything else they'd like to add before we wrap up? Looks like Ian does.
My last piece of advice would be to really, really do your homework on all the schools you're looking at. There's so many schools out there, and it's such a big, important decision for the rest of your life that if you get it right, it's a phenomenal decision. So if you can find a school, even if it's you're doing the 2-year school first and then finishing up getting a degree at another 4-year school. If you get the path right and you're happy with the school and the coach that you're going to be around every day, it's such an important relationship, and the players, the teammates, if you get it right, it's a really fantastic decision. So doing your homework and then checking out every aspect of the school and the program is so important, and you can learn so much just from being on a campus and watching games throughout the year. And there's so many differences. You should be looking at class sizes and how big the school is, or maybe you want a smaller school, whatever it may be. Definitely where the school is located, because there's a good chance you might be able to get a job there in the local area not long after graduating. So I would say just doing a ton of homework and casting the net wide and slowly narrowing it down, rather than starting out with 1 or 2 schools that may or may not work out. As Chris said, there's only 5,000 players on the men's side in Division 1, same in Division 2, right around 200 schools. So there's not that many places. So cast your net wide, do your homework, and take your time making what's a really important decision.
Outstanding. I've got a prompt here for Jason on his final comments. In a conversation about a year ago, Jason told me that working with the coaching staff at Point Loma has really changed and impacted his life. And so, can you just talk about, as your closing comments, how important it is to interview the coaching staff?
Yeah, I'd say you have to make sure it's a right fit, and division doesn't mean anything. So last year around this time, I could have got a Division 1 job at a pretty decent school, but at the end of the day, and lots of counsel from people like Frank, I realized that it was best for me to stay in an environment that suited me. I maybe could have went off to the school in Virginia, but at the end of the day, for me, for my family, it probably wasn't the best move. So you need to make sure that wherever you go, it needs to be, and everyone's touched on it, but it's really important that it needs to be the ultimate place for you. Like, a big thing for me is my ability to be able to pray before practice and be able to pray after practice. That might not be a big thing to you, but to me that's huge, and that means all the world to me. It means my quality of, not just the prayer part makes my quality of life better, but my wife being happy makes my life better. Being around my kids more than I would have been makes my life better. So quality life is huge, and make sure that this decision you make next in your life, that you get it right the first time.
Young people, I think what you're hearing, all of us as college graduates that played, what you're hearing us say is you really need to just look at who you think you want to be and try and make decisions based on that, because you're going to have to live with this really big decision. As Ziggy said, for him it was a 12-year, $200,000 decision. Parents are like falling off in their chairs thinking about that, but that's the reality. It is a huge, huge decision. So we hope that you honor that decision with, and you're doing it right now by trying to do some research and learn, but with enough research that you really feel great about your decision when you make it. Wendy is offering to answer any preguntas en español. So if there's any Spanish speakers, Wendy, do you want to grab the mic? And anyone else, I'm going to let Wendy have the mic here in a sec, but anyone else that wants to wrap up with a quick question or answer with a college coach on their way out, you may do so. But coaches, unless there's anyone else, I'm going to let Wendy make that offer, and we're going to wrap it up. Coaches, anyone else have anything they want to say? Good. Wendy? You want to go ahead and offer to answer any questions in Spanish?
Oiga, si tiene preguntas en español, voy a estar aquí por un ratito, de lo que sea. So, ahorita, como vean.
And for the rest of you, they'll also be around. So how about a nice round of applause for our college coaches? Thank you very much for the investment you've made by attending our college coaches panel discussion. College coaches, thank all of you for your time out here today. Have a great rest of your Sunday, everyone.